Ludlow with an odious chuckle. We're really rather modest here as regards our eating habits. A man of your gourmandizing sensibilities would probably prefer dining alone anyway. Diver had hefted the empty beer glass in his hand and thought about bringing it down hard on the octogenarian's skull. No. If he could have chosen, he would have elected to dine with his Welsh well-wisher. He had thrown a glance across the bar at a known ill-wisher. What had brought von Zitzewitz to his reading, and why was he still sitting there grinning? Deciding that offence was what he wanted to give after all, Diver had said with venom, "Actually, I would prefer to eat in discerning company, but if there's none to be had, I'll do without." And he had headed out into the dripping street. The fountain plopped, the sitar plonked. Diver tried out a few more descriptive arabesques to capture the flavour of the mushrooms. Then, scraping the bowl clean, he sank back in his chair, glugging the last of his Rioja. Another day in the life of a poet. He checked the time, saw it was after 11, remembered he'd put the key for his hotel in a pocket, searched for it in a state of anxiety, and then found it. His room number was 101. He leaned back. He would have liked to have fallen asleep where he was, but suddenly the Sikh waiter was there, presenting the bill. "Was everything okay, sir?" Diver tried to express his complete approval, but found himself somehow tongue-tied. He struggled to his feet to gain access to his pocket, and in doing so embarrassed himself by farting. The waiter ignored this, smiling. And when Diver had counted out enough notes to cover the amount, plus a generous tip, spun round and vanished back into the kitchen with a little pile of crumpled notes on his tray. Diver picked up the receipt, left on the table, folded it into his wallet, reclaimed his overcoat, and walked a mite unsteadily out into the night. Behind him he heard the door being bolted. Which way was it to that damned hotel? And what was it called again? Only 100 yards or so? More like 100 miles. As he made his way down the main street, he noticed how cold he felt. Stepping off the curb to cross the road, he nearly lost his balance and fell. Surely he hadn't drunk that much. A searing pain in his gut left him gasping for air. Christ, maybe it was that chicken with scrambled egg. Could it be salmonella? Surely it didn't act this fast. He stopped and looked up at a flickering sign. The Rudyard Kipling. Yeah, that was it. What a stupid name for a hotel. He crossed the road, realizing he couldn't feel his feet and his hands anymore. This made it extremely difficult for him to locate the key in his pocket. He managed, however, but then the keyhole kept moving around in the door. He stabbed at it, cursing, and finally lurched into the foyer. He dragged himself up the stairs to his first floor room. Shiva was waiting for him, seated demurely on the edge of the bed. All his heads were smiling, showing terrible stained teeth, and snakes were uncoiling slowly from 5 dark throats. 4 arms beckoned him in. At the extremities of each arm were hands as big as shovels holding knives. The arms elongated and reached caressingly towards him, then slit open Diver's belly from groin to navel. Shiva was laughing, extricating Diver's guts, unwinding them and coiling them on the floor. Diver tried to remonstrate, but his vocal cords were suddenly stopped up with some thick, black, bituminous stuff. He turned and staggered away from this monstrosity towards the bathroom, feeling a hand insert itself into his rectum, a whole arm. And then there was Shiva's hand emerging from Diver's own mouth, appearing in front of his own eyes and wagging a naughty boy finger at him. Diver twisted round, impaled like a puppet on this infinitely extensible arm, and sank backwards, as he saw a frightful apparition appear in the doorway of the bathroom. The pain was something beyond pain. It was the cosmos exploding. The face no longer looked demure and not friendly. It was the implacable, dark, frowning face of the destroyer, Shiva. And it murmured his name with the relish of one savoring a victim. Diva, Diva, Diva. Come to me, Virgil Diva. Fergus Diva. Not the last name.
One of the other poets in the book is an Irish poet from Galway called Barnaby Brown, who does really good readings and is very popular, and who is a bit of a womanizer. And this is his last poem that is sent to the premier poetry magazine called The Boot just before he dies. To ash again. The urn turned upside down, emptied out the ashes and rolled away. The wind grabbed each ash flake, swooped it into the sky, swirled it across the sea, over fish, through gulls. And on the other side, the ashes came together to form the reborn man, who stole a bicycle, pedalled up a mountain and into a rushy tarn, where he drowned, while the urn floated across that same sea, rolled across sand, fields, then up that mountain, as trout heaved the corpse out. Lightning bolts blasted it to ash, which the urn ate, then turned upside down.
I should explain that one of the inspirations for writing this book was the famous Australian poet Ern Malley. Ern Malley was an invention of two Australian poets who were not in sympathy with the kind of things that were being written at the time. And they invented this poet.
1940s.
1940s.
Sydney, Melbourne.
That's right. And the two poets wrote all of Ern Malley's poems in the process of an afternoon or two afternoons.
A weekend, there were Australian soldiers on one of the islands off Japan, and they were bored, and they got a bottle of whiskey, they got the Bible, and they got the complete Shakespeare, and they sat in for a whole weekend and banged out all Ern Malley's poems.
And what happened then was quite remarkable, because they sent the poems to a very, very sort of trendy magazine called Angry Penguin, which published all the avant-garde Australian poets of the time.
In Adelaide.
In Adelaide, and Ern Malley's poems were immediately published by the editor, who thought they were absolutely wonderful.
No, if I may come in. The letter came from Sydney, purporting to be Ern Malley's sister, who found her brother dead in a rooming house in Melbourne, and found these 16 poems, and had no idea if they were any good, but a friend of hers had an English degree, and she showed the poems to her friend, and her friend said, "I think these might be very good."
And the editor thought they were very good. And he published them. And they were soon the talk of Australia, and indeed they found favour in the United States as well. And Ern Malley is still considered to be a poet.
If you look at the contemporary Penguin Australian anthology of contemporary Australian poetry, you'll see among all the real Australian poets, you'll see among the contributors Ern Malley, and he's represented by all 16 poems that Angry Penguins did. So no sign that he's an imaginary poet. He's real in that anthology.
And John Ashbery, the famous American poet, John Ashbery, claims that O'Malley is one of the great poets of the 20th century. So there you are. And naturally, we decided that we would have to be a bit O'Malley